a demo, walk you through a few diagrams, drawings, and answer questions you guys may have. I think we have a little poll kind of thing we're going to do. There's a raise hand down here, so just ask questions as you go. Probably answer those at the end, though. So anyway, moving on. So we do a poll, do a slide poll, live demo questions. So it's pretty easy. It's not, like I said, I don't mess around too much with the PowerPoint. So, ooh, look at that. We're at the poll question already. So let me find a poll. Let me say launch poll. Do you currently use DCIM? So data center infrastructure management. See if you guys do any kind of DCIM stuff now. I'll give you guys a minute. We're at 12 seconds, 13, 14, 15. So, where most people say no, got a yes, a couple yeses, but most people are on the no side of this. So, all right. I think I got most people. So thanks for that. And the poll. Okay, great. So most people were a big no on that. Let me see here. All right. So we're going to be talking about connections, sort of tracking outages, physical paths, building out new networks, maintain accurate documentation, see what's connected, decommission cables, and talk about questions. At least that's the plan. Question 2. All right. Poll number 2. We're moving right along here. Launch. What are you most interested in seeing today? Copper and fiber management, tray management, circuit management, outside plant, or power cable management. Copper and fiber, I think we're speaking more about inside plant, rack and stack, that type of stuff, how things are connected to each other, your patch panels and switches and routers and so on. Tray management, circuit management, that depends, circuit might be a defined circuit path or having to do with inside and outside plant. Outside plant connectivity, a little bit of OSP, and then power. So I'll talk about, I have diagrams to kind of represent each of these. We'll talk about those. All right. So for sure, for some of you, it's probably a mix of both. So I'll end that. All right. Well, thanks for that. I'm going to hit stop share. I'm going to share my other screen here. Share. We're going over to, I think it's this one. Yeah, there we go. So this is our demo project. So cable management, what does it mean? It means different things to different people, but primarily it means, managing your cable infrastructure in some way, right? So you've got most people I deal with that are looking for some sort of cabling tool. They use something already, like Excel or Visio to sort of manage the infrastructure. Probably Excel if you're a bigger organization, just because of the rows of data that you can put in, you can usually handle pretty well. Or maybe you have a homegrown thing, got an Access database or SQL or something, or maybe use some other software tool, which is fine. But those things, at least Excel and Visio, I mean, they're great tools, but at some point they get a little difficult because you can't really visualize any information. You can't really see the connections. You can represent them, of course, but it's a little harder. Visio is a little harder to manage when you get really big, I think. There's not a lot of automation with Visio. There's some, and Excel's Excel. So, but for us, we sort of have different paths you can follow. So for instance, if I want to go look at when I say different paths, I don't mean this hierarchy I'm showing you on the left-hand side. That's all. That's determined by you, the end user. These are just examples. What I mean by the path you follow is how do you want to structure your data and organize it and visualize it if that's what you want to do. Like for me, I've got this, project where I show a map and I show different locations. For you might have one location, and in that case, maybe you just want to show one data center or wiring closet and a bunch of cabinets. So your top level might just be just that, hey, here's a room and here's all the stuff inside of it, or here's just all the racks at the very top level. That's up to you. That's what we refer to as the hierarchy. But these things that I'm going to be clicking on and drilling down into, these are objects from our catalog. Our catalog consists of nodes, racks, devices, and then links. So a node is usually things that represent hierarchy. It might be a building, it might be a floor, it might be a room, it might be a site like I have here. All these objects that you see can be fully customized from the standpoint of you can change icons, you can add your own icons, add your own objects to the catalog, create your own devices and racks and nodes and all these things and links as well in the tool. So you don't need us to do that. You can do that yourself and make it look how you want it to look, right? So, but with that said, I've got an object here. It has data fields. Data fields are also user defined. So we try to keep the tool pretty flexible. But from a cable management, you may want to see things like I want to see a map, and I want to see how cables run. That's more outside plant, right? You might want to show things like, hey, where's my power coming from? I've got these crazy generators, and where do they run? How do they feed data in? Where's the local substation that's feeding power into my building, and so on? Not that you have control over those things necessarily, maybe the generators, but you just might want to know generally, like who's supplying the power, where is this coming from, how is it connecting into my building. So you could do that or show that information. Maybe it's something you don't even care about, then you just move on, and you're not going to document that, which is fine. So here we show I've got a building, picture of a building. It's a background image that I uploaded, JPEG or PNG or something like that. I can actually turn that off if you don't want to see it. So these are objects from my catalog. So first floor, second floor. But the building picture is a nice visual, right? And then I've got some stats that are being counted up here on the top right. Those are automated. So as I add things, those calculations get updated and so on. So then I go down into this would be a data center view, right? I've got a floor plan, I've got cabinets. Again, I can turn that floor plan off. So you would upload that. What kind of image do you need to represent a floor plan? JPEG, PNG, SVG, that type of stuff. Something that a browser understands natively. We're heavy on HTML5. So we try and keep it where you don't need plugins or any of that stuff to render the images and pictures. It's all drag and drop. If I want to add a new thing to the drawing, I just drag it out and drop it. So like a new cabinet. So I'll zoom in. Here I'm looking at cabinets. Right now I'm looking at the cabinets based on rack utilization. So what does this have to do with cabling? Well, it all leads down to where you may be showing connectivity and connections. So for instance, in a cabinet, right? So I've got a cabinet elevation. You see some connections in there. A lot of times connections is things that I won't even show necessarily, like interdiagram connections that go from this cabinet outside. What are all the connections that go from here to another cabinet, to another building, to another place? Those things I usually don't display here, mainly because with the cabinets, when you talk about a cabinet like this, you might have literally 500 connections that run out. If you show all those, it can be quite a bit of information. Not that you can't. I choose to really see the information down at a lower level. I want to see it down at the level of the device, let's say. So I might select the device, see information about the device, and drill down into it. And this is where I'm really going to see the connections. What you're seeing here are the connections from the device ports and what it's connected to. Normally, if I wasn't showing the connections, this is what I'd see. I'd see, here's the device, here's all the ports, power and data, and then you'd start creating connections in the tool. Now, this would be a device for us. We have these devices in our catalog. You drag them out. All the ports are predefined, or slots for cards and so on. But when you start to connect things, then you actually see what you're connected to. And if I zoom in on this, it'll give you some idea. So here I've got port 0 connected to port 1F of, this is a patch panel. If I double click that port, it'll take me to what I'm connected to, which in this case is the patch panel port, right? And it shows you, oh, here's the patch panel. And then if I double click and I go back, here's the, me back at the connection. So, why do you want to track this? Well, I mean, if you're in a data center and you're looking at a port, you might want to know what it's connected to, right? I mean, the first connection you probably know, you may have labeled it or something, right? But you also might want to know which ports are free without having to go in the data center. So if you're documenting things, then you sort of know. I guess you could SSH into the device and just look it up and go, is there something hanging off of this thing? But not everybody has the rights to do that, right? I mean, if you're doing planning and stuff, not everybody necessarily has the right to go into this device and look up the ports that are open or not, because that's a security thing, right? You want to limit who has access, so you document it. So this is one way you document it. You visualize the information, and we'll talk about, how do you get the information into the tool in just a second. But so why am I doing the documentation? Well, I want to know what ports are being used, where are things connected to, and a big part of that is one, capacity planning from the port side, but certainly troubleshooting on the other side. If for some reason, I've got a port here and it's connected to some, into some other device as part of some process, and that process seems to be failing, then you might want to know the end-to-end path of what's going on. So physically, I'm talking about physical connections, right? Port to port. I can generate what we call the CLR, which is a circuit layout record. I just call it the physical path view. So this is showing you hierarchy, the swim lane, the blue thing is the swim lane, right? Water, blue. So we call it the swim lane. So that's a hierarchy. And you're saying, well, what does that mean? Well, this port is part of the device. This is the device I was just looking at a second ago. And this is the port that had the connection. So this port is part of this device, which is in this rack. Zoom out a little more, which is in this floor and in this building. So that's the hierarchy. And then you get into the physical path. Port 0 connects to port 1F of the patch panel. And this is the thing you're using to connect them together. Cable, Ethernet cable, fiber jumper, whatever cable you're using to connect those things together. So data flows, that's what that is, right? So that shows you that first connection. And then there's another connection. This is a cross connect because this is a patch panel. This is the front and the back of the patch panel. So we show, you have to show some sort of cross that happens in between them. At least that's what we do standard, typically. Now this patch panel connects to this patch panel with another connection, which is a copper cable Ethernet. There's another patch panel, and then you just keep following, all the way down. So this is a totally different rack now. Cisco card port. And if I double click and I want to see that port, where it is in the diagram, I just click on it, goes to it. It says, oh, here I am, flashes. I go up a level, and then I get to see the card inside the chassis. What a nice looking chassis. And then I go up a level, and then I see the device inside the cabinet. Right. So there you go. So that's physical connections. That's cabling right there, right? I mean, that's me finding and seeing cabling from end to end. So what else? That's more of a data center type view, right? You might have wiring closets. You might have, a floor plan. We go over to Sydney. Can't travel there right now, so at least I can pretend. So I got this building here. I got floors. Excuse me. Double click, go down to the first floor, and then a floor plan. Right? Same thing before, floor plan, background image, SVG, PNG, JPEG. Turn that off. So I have a bunch of objects on the floor plan. I got wall jacks, I got PCs, I got printers. I also have these rectangles. These rectangles would be rooms in this case. So there's a room. I can double click on the room. I can go down and see the phone. I can see a wall jack. I can see a connection between the phone and the wall jack. I'm using an Ethernet cable, right? Then I double click, and then that takes me to whatever I'm connected to. In this case, phone connects to wall jack connects to patch panel connects to the back of the patch panel, and that connects to, in turn, using a Ethernet cable to a HP ProCurve. And if I want to see this guy, this is the wiring closet, right? You typically have wiring closets on your floor where all those wonderful cables and connections run to, and then those in turn run someplace else, usually up some conduit, down some conduit, etc. So this is the ProCurve. But if I want to see the ProCurve actually in the rack, I can do that. And again, I may or may not be showing connections. It depends. I think I have a lot of those hidden right now. Yep. So if I go up a level again, then I can see the actual cabinet in the wiring closet. And if I go up again, I can see where the wiring closet lives. And there it is. Right. So wonderful. And then if you want to see, so that's sort of, you know, inside a building floor plan wiring closet. The other was a rack elevation, you know, inside the rack cabinet, how they're connected together. And then if you want to see more, I want to see maybe outside plant. Outside plant usually encompasses, you know, you have a dynamic map where you can see, um, you know, the a map. You can zoom into the map. You can see different things like buildings, right? You've got your connections, maybe things like duct banks, whatever. But in this case, now you're starting to incorporate outside plant. You might have manholes, handholds, pits. You might have fiber cables with strands. So for instance, if I go in this cabinet here, I've got a cable here with a bunch of strands, 288 strands, in fact. I can open that up and see the strand interface and see all the strands and how they're connected if I want to. But I can also, again, generate that physical path. And it doesn't matter whether it's in the building, whether it's in a, you know, a floor, or whether it's outside plant where you have a path that actually runs. In this case, it runs from a building, bioresearch building, through manhole to another building, Jimenez Hall. So you get the whole physical path. You actually see strands, individual strands that are in use in this path, and so on. So, all right, great. That's cabling. That's how you get into cabling, you know, showing cabling and all that stuff. Now, the real trick is, you know, how do you get the data into the system? Is it all manual? Can I discover? What are my options, right? That's what it always leads to, because the last thing you want to do is necessarily do this all manually. Although I have plenty of customers that do it. I mean, when you don't have documentation and it's hurting you, you put the time and effort into it. And it's not always that bad. I mean, the first, you know, whatever, it depends on how much stuff you got to do and how much data that you have is good. Now, if you do have data and it's good data and you have it in some format, you know, like CSVs and things like that, you can do things like Excel import. So for instance, I can come over here, delete this, yes, kill that out. Because that's always the question, you know, how do I get the data in? This seems like a lot of work. Well, again, you could go out, do an Excel import, press a button, and open up my sheet here. Go find my Excel. There we go. This is a good one. Hit start. So this starts to import. It's going to import objects and links, and it's going to build a hierarchy. It's going to place buildings on the map using Latin long. It's going to populate data fields. It's going to build the hierarchy and all the connections. It's going to rack mount devices for me. So Excel can do and create a project. Of course, again, you have to put the data in the Excel sheet. So if you have data already, you just put it in R format, and then you go and you have that happen. So that's cooking. So the other thing you could do is we have this thing called the net terrain collector. So we have these connectors built in that you can go and take advantage of. So one thing we find a lot of customers doing is, of course, SNMP discovery. So you throw SNMP IP address ranges in here, and you go out and do a discovery. What does that have to do with links? Because we also try and determine connections and ports and assemble connections and links that get put into the net terrain system here, where you can then see those connections. So if you don't have a lot of good data, or maybe you do, you just want to also, you know, do a discovery. I have a lot of folks that have, you know, they might purchase a new company and they really don't have documentation at the new company, so they want to do a discovery. So that's one way to do it. So here's that thing I talked about. There you go. We've got buildings being positioned. I've got floors being created. All those things you see there are connections. All those blue, they're just connections that are going out into other buildings. So I can drill all the way down into a cabinet, see the cabinet, it rack mounted equipment, and it also placed cards inside the chassis, and then it created the connections for me. So, ultimately, I'm showing you our tool, right? Net terrain. Is this the right tool for you? I don't know. Depends on what you're trying to do, and is it the right fit in many aspects, right? Things you have to investigate. So if you have questions, we're happy to, of course, answer those. If you need to try something out, we have netterrain.com. You can go to and sign up and kind of kick the tires a bit if you want to do that. But when you're looking at tools, I think the thing you want to do is just see if it's the right fit for what you're really trying to accomplish. I always tell people don't take on too much. Maybe start with one building, one location, a floor, wiring closet, whatever. Build something up, and then you can always add on over time. At least with our tool, you can start out small and start to build out over time and add as you go. But anyway, so let me see if there's any questions out there. If you have any questions, let me know. I'm going to stop sharing. We're running out of time, and I just want to see if there's any questions. So, and you can always follow up again with myself or sales at Graphical Networks. You can go to graphicalnetworks.com. That is our website. It's probably where you found us anyway. You can look there. There's some videos, other webinars, other things. If you don't want to talk to somebody here, certainly you can check all that stuff out and see. I don't have any questions yet, but I'll give you guys another minute or two. See if anything comes up. But managing cabling is interesting. Definitely automation as much as you can, using data that you currently have as much as you can. If you like that data, if you believe in that data, you want to take advantage of it. We have different ways of bringing in data. Of course, I mentioned Excel import. We have these connectors that can connect to data sources, do SNMP discovery, etc. There's other things you can do too, connect to database tables and views, and so there's a lot of options. It just comes down to what you're ultimately trying to sort of get to from that standpoint. So, all right, I don't see any questions coming in. So, I want to thank everybody for your time. These crazy days, but certainly we're available to talk to you, either via the usual Zoom meeting or some other format that you might need. Or I've got a question. Any experience with importing data from other systems? Yeah, so we do. It depends on the system, but we do things like connect to like SolarWinds, let's say, and bring data from SolarWinds. That's not as a replacement. That's to enhance. You're already doing discovery with SolarWinds or using it as a management tool. So we just take information from that, bring it into NetTerrain so you can visualize that, right? Put it in a cabinet or hierarchy and those types of things. So that's one example. We have connectors to other systems too. We usually use those systems APIs. So SolarWinds, what's the other one that's pretty common now? SolarWinds, Spectrum, vCenter, ServiceNow. I always get people asking me about ServiceNow. It seems pretty popular. So yeah, if you're looking at replacing an existing cable management system, depends on the system. I'm not familiar with that system. That doesn't mean we haven't worked with it before. The other thing too, if that system either has two things you look at, one is APIs, two is can you export data to some sort of format, CSV typically. If you can do one or the other, pulling data across to whether it's my system or somebody else's shouldn't be a big deal. And you can talk in more detail with us about that, what you're trying to do. But the thing I would check is, do they have an API, a good one, something up to date and current, or two, do they have the ability to export the data as some sort of CSV so it can be re-imported, whether it's by my tool or whatever tool you pick. Those are the questions you want to ask. APIs and exports, those are the big ones. So, but we have a lot of experience with certainly doing that, either replacing systems or just integrating with existing systems that they're just trying to leverage data from. So anyway, questions or any way to talk to someone over the phone? Of course, you can definitely talk to us. You can. I would email Fred, FRED, at graphicalnetworks.com or fred.co. He's the co-host here, fred.koh, at Graphical Networks. He'll call you and talk to you, or we'll set up a call and I can be on that with you guys. Or again, sales@graphicalnetworks.com. But just email Fred. He'll definitely he'll set up a call. We can answer all your technical questions and see if this might be the right fit for you. You have to obviously decide that. So yeah, no problem. Thanks everybody for attending. I hope this was helpful. And stay safe out there. And hopefully one day we'll be able to travel and actually meet each other in person one day. So anyway, all right, everybody take care. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.